Movie stars used to make comedies almost impossible to fail, but the moment they disappeared, everything fell apart. Ever since then, we've been told the same story. Comedies don't work anymore, and movie stars are dead. But that's not what actually happened. Because what played out in December 2025 and February 2026 completely broke everything Hollywood thinks it knows about comedies and movie stars. And it all came down to one pattern that made comedy movies almost guaranteed to succeed. That pattern was simple. Comedy movie stars that we all love aren't just elite talent, they're one of the most reliable money-making engines that Hollywood has ever seen. When you think of the all-time greats, names like Ben Stiller, Vince Vaughn, Paul Rudd, Steve Carell, Owen Wilson, Jack Black, and Will Ferrell come to mind. They're the core members of the group known as the Frat Pack. And yes, they gave us some of the most memorable performances of all time.
You play the motorboat?
What is wrong with you?
She gets a special cologne. It's called Sex Panther by Odeon. It's illegal in 9 countries.
It's quite pungent.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Brian, I'm going to be honest with you. That smells like pure gasoline.
But they also hold the key to something much bigger, which we'll get back to. Because when paired together, these guys proved to be a winning formula for Hollywood again and again. They didn't just produce hits, they consistently pulled in hundreds of millions through the likes of Meet the Parents and Wedding Crashers, among countless others. But the crazier part is that this still holds up today, and Hollywood just hasn't realized it yet. And when they underperformed, they were often still profitable, like the case of Zoolander. It was widely considered to be a major disappointment, only grossing $60 million off of a $28 million budget, so much so that Esquire even called it a flop. This was a literal dream scenario for studios. They could disappoint, but still churn a profit. But the star power effect didn't stop there. Seann William Scott became a star from American Pie and carried Road Trip, Role Models, and Dude, Where's My Car to box office wins. Similarly, Zach Galifianakis accomplished the same thing alongside Robert Downey Jr. with Due Date after rising to fame from The Hangover. But no one proves this better than Adam Sandler. He built what felt like an unstoppable auto-profiting empire in the late 90s and 2000s through movies like Mr. Deeds, Anger Management, and 50 First Dates, among so many others. When you look at the data, virtually all of your favorite comedies from this century were star-driven. And Hollywood really took for granted how reliably consistent these actors actually were. This wasn't luck. It was a system, and it worked over and over and over again. Yet despite win after win, these movies didn't slow down, they flat out disappeared. And many of the actors who built them walked away from comedy entirely. So what happened? The most obvious answer is that studios stopped making comedies. There was a point when 1 in every 5 movies in theaters was a comedy. That number has since dwindled to 1 in every 20. So even if these stars wanted to headline a comedy, the opportunity to do so just wasn't there. Which is insane, considering how reliable they proved to be. But this is where it gets even more interesting. Hollywood didn't see this as a mistake and doubled down on it. And later on, we're going to completely tear this fallacy apart. But that's what happened. When you get into the why of it all, you notice a clear trend. Studios made a collective decision to prioritize big budget franchises over comedies. Because why make consistently hundreds of millions of dollars when you have the opportunity to potentially make $1 billion? This came with a serious cost. Spending all of that money meant fewer money, fewer resources, and inevitably fewer and fewer comedies being made. In the process, the big budget blockbusters stole several of comedy's biggest draws, such as Paul Rudd, who became Ant-Man, Robert Downey Jr., who got locked down as Iron Man, and Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. Given the extraordinarily long shoot times and constant reshoots, it became impossible for several of the greats to fit comedy into their schedule. It also didn't help at all when literally the most recognized comedy movie actor of all time, Adam Sandler, signs a deal with Netflix to abandon movie theaters entirely and act in movies that nobody watches. To put the icing on the cake, you'll never get movies like Step Brothers, Anchorman, or Talladega Nights ever again, because the biggest comedy actor-director marriage of all time, between Will Ferrell and Adam McKay, filed for a nasty divorce. And just like that, the most reliable formula in comedy disappeared, which has given us the era that we've been stuck in ever since, the so-called death of the movie star. And now the story we're told is simple. It's not just comedy, but the prevailing opinion is that box office draws no longer matter and that the movie star has died. You hear it everywhere. from news outlets to some of the most prolific filmmakers of all time.
Sandra Bullock is in Speed, all right? And everyone thought she was amazing in it, all right? She was charming as hell. Everyone fell in love with her. But that's not the case now. No, we want to see that guy playing Wolverine or whatever.
But what if they have this all wrong? Because by the end, you'll see what's actually happening, and the results don't match the narrative. Even if comedies are only being made roughly 1/4 as often as they were when the comedy movie stars were driving the industry, they're still being made. There's also prevailing opinion that the genre has completely fallen off, and I'm not shy about this either. It's literally the thesis of this YouTube channel. Think about it. How many great comedies can you actually name from the last 10 years? And more importantly, when was the last time you saw someone like Will Ferrell or Ben Stiller headline one of them? Or, God forbid, multiple of the comedy greats teaming up? Which makes you wonder, maybe the success wasn't random. Maybe those actors weren't just talented, but maybe they were the driving force behind why they made so much money in the first place. Because something just doesn't add up. Despite everything that's changed, none of these actors actually ever went away. So if movie stars don't matter anymore, why do the results look so different? Let's test it. What actually happens when you remove comedy stars from the equation? Because if movie stars don't matter, then star-driven comedies and comedies without stars should perform exactly the same. Let's look at some comedies made within the last few years that were made without any marquee talent. Bros did $14.8 million on a $22 million budget. Joyride, $15.8 million on a $32 million budget. And Snack Shack couldn't even cross $500,000 off of a $4.5 million budget. If you thought it was bad that all three of these movies failed to make their budget back, it gets even worse when you realize you need to cut these box office numbers in half because theaters keep half of the revenue. These movies didn't just flop, they got absolutely crushed. Now let's compare these examples to modern comedies that actually did stack up stars. Granted, these examples are sparse because Hollywood just flat out stopped casting comedy stars. But thankfully we do have two examples of Hollywood experimenting with this, both coming within the last few months. And the results tell a much different story. Remember the Frat Pack? Well, they brought Paul Rudd and Jack Black together to do Anaconda, which was in the same mid-budget range as Joyride and Bros. And the outcome? Over $100 million at the box office and nearly 3 times its budget. Same budget range, same modern audience. But instead of struggling to make even half of its budget back, Paul Rudd and Jack Black nearly tripled it. And it did all of this in spite of awful reviews. Contrasting to the literal top tier reviews that both Bros and Joyride got. Now imagine if the movie was actually liked and got good word of mouth. And then this completely flips everything. Hollywood brought back Kevin James, best known for King of Queens and Grown Ups, to star alongside Allison Hannigan, best known for this.
Oh, and this one time, at band camp, I stuck a flute in my
in a comedy with an even lower budget than Snack Shack. And before even finishing its box office run, it's completely blown the doors off of its $4 million budget, currently standing at $22 million. Same era and same rules, yet Snack Shack struggled to make even 10% of its budget back. It's the same exact pattern we saw in the 2000s, happening all over again. You can't ignore this. The moment you add comedy stars back into the equation, everything changes. Comedy movie stars didn't just not die, it's literally never been more important to headline comedy movies with them. The audience never left. Hollywood just ignored the blueprint that was right in front of them. But this is just one of the lies currently being fed to you about comedy movies. Because right now, studios are leaving billions on the table by believing a whole list of other myths surrounding the genre, like the idea that comedy doesn't travel internationally, or that audiences won't show up to theaters anymore. But when you actually look at the data, every single one of these narratives completely falls apart. And I dispel all of these myths here